China is slamming the UN human rights chief after she issued a report finding credible evidence of crimes against humanity.
是服务美西方以疆制华战略的政治工具。
Beijing says Michelle Bachelet's report on Uyghur abuses is, quote, a farce, a politically motivated attempt by the West to smear China. The report found China is committing serious human rights violations. The treatment of Uyghurs has drawn protests and outcry around the world for years. The U.S. has said China's mass detention of an estimated 1 million Uyghurs constitutes genocide. A majority of MPs in Canada agree, but the Canadian government has stopped short of that designation, instead pushing for this UN-led investigation. Guy Saint-Jacques is a former Canadian ambassador to China, and he joins us from Montreal tonight. Guy, let's start with the report itself. It found China is committing serious human rights violations that could include crimes against humanity. We've heard it from other sources. Now we're hearing it from the United Nations. Just how significant do you think this finding is?
Well, I think it is very significant because it comes from the High Commissioner for Human Rights herself. And in fact, in my view, it's a damning report, and I can understand very well why China tried by all means to delay its publication.
Yeah, I mean, China, perhaps not too surprisingly, is really slamming this report today. They're coming out saying that this is essentially a Western orchestrated attempt to smear Beijing. We know from media reports out of China that they were actively trying to delay or kill this report altogether. What do you make of Beijing's response?
Well, I think the first thing is, of course, it shows that Beijing is still concerned about its image abroad. In this case, it tried to enlist also countries that are aligned with Beijing, that are other authoritarian regime, or countries that receive substantial assistance from China and cannot refuse a request to when China comes calling. But also what this report confirms is all the allegations that we had seen from various sources in the last, I would say, 5 years. And it gives credibility to all those reports. And without talking of genocide, it says that it's most likely that there have been crimes against humanity that have been committed. And this is very serious. And of course, now, the UN Human Rights Council will have to study this report. Countries, member countries will have to discuss the recommendations. And the recommendations are very demanding on China. It calls for the release of detainees, for reparation, for restoring religious freedom. It calls also on China to sign international covenants against torture. And so now we will have to see how China will react to this. But I expect that China will stall and continue to claim that this is a biased report and that it's unfair criticism.
Yeah, China does not like to be criticized at all, really, do they? And do you think that having the UN, other than, not human rights agencies, not some of the other intelligence groups that have been digging into this, but having the UN call them out, do you think that that will make them change their behavior at all? Will they shift policy in Xinjiang?
Well, I think they have started already to shift policy, and it's clear that when they agreed to the visit of Mrs. Bachelet that took place in May, in fact, they had agreed to that just before the Winter Olympics, and that was a way to try to lower the pressure coming from Western countries that, or from voices in Western countries that were saying that the games should be boycotted. And so now they know that the truth is out. And in all of this, of course, it's important to remember that there were legitimate concerns on the part of China following terrorist incidents that took place in China, including in 2013 in Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang, right after the visit of Xi Jinping. But what the report says is that the measures that were taken by China to counter terrorism go way too far and don't respect human rights. In fact, that it was the laws that were applied were vague and led to discriminatory treatment. There was no oversight, and it was prone to abuse. And in the circumstances, again, I think it's very difficult for China to hide. Now, in fact, they will have to take measures. The other point that is important also in this report, it calls on the international business community to make more efforts to ensure that they don't export technology that could be used for repressive measures, but also that they are not using forced labor in their supply chains. And of course, it calls on governments also to take appropriate action.
Yeah, there was legislation, I believe, that passed through U.S. Congress last year on that very thing, on forced labor, and there is a bill working its way through the Senate here in Canada as well on that issue. As you know, Guy, the Canadian government really has so far refrained from designating China's treatment of the Uyghurs and other Turkic ethnic minorities in the region as genocide. Instead, they were really pushing for this investigation, right? That was kind of the thing they were hiding behind, if you will. When they were asked about this question, they said, let's leave it to the United Nations to look into this. Now the findings are out. What do you think this federal government needs to do next?
Well, of course, it's very difficult to prove that genocide has been taking place and is taking place. For that, you would need a full investigation on the ground, and of course, China will never allow this. But on the other hand, this is a very important and again damning report on the part of the UN. It talks about serious crimes against humanity. I think at a minimum, Ottawa should welcome the report. It should say that it will look at it and will speak with allies to raise common questions and develop common strategy with allies that they will apply to try to address the situation. And of course, this will be difficult because China will balk. But I think if Ottawa says that human rights and religious freedom, freedom of speech are important freedoms, then you have to translate this into your official policy. And of course, a good opportunity for that also will be to look at the upcoming Indo-Pacific strategy. It has to have a chapter on China. This report confirms all the egregious behavior and the abuse done over the last few years with the resulting drop in personal freedom and human rights in China. I think we have to address this and recognize that China is a bully and runs a very aggressive foreign policy.
Okay, let's leave it there. Guy Saint-Jacques, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.